Look what I found. Check this thing out. It's a Craig electronic notebook. And it plays those Sanyo designed Micro-Pack cassettes. These little cartridges. Very neat looking. It's got a good heft to it, built real solid.
Didn't tech mode already?
Alright, you're joining me with this thing pulled apart, but I had a bit of a gripe with this. I was originally running it on a bench supply and just injecting 6 volts to this little connector here. And the little amplifier was working. It is running now. But right now, that motor is also spinning. So I have it in play mode. Just shut it off. Before, the amplifier was turning on in play mode, but the motor was only spinning in rewind. And after tracing all the wiring in here, I realized in order to make the motor spin at a closer speed to play, it actually just powers it off of half the batteries. So I did a little janky sketch of where the batteries are positioned, and I found that you have the red and black wires on that little external power port. Obviously go through all these for 6 volts, but this white wire goes to black for the play mode. So there's a little white wire, real hard to see here. There we go. This little thin white wire right there that goes over to this connector, and this is the remote jack. So if you have a microphone, it's got a little remote pause switch on it. And then that goes along to this internal pause switch that overrides that. So if you don't have a external microphone with a pause switch plugged in, you can still unpause it with this switch. And yeah, that goes all the way back, and that that actually gets negative because this already had positive going to it, so then it's actually going across batteries A and B here. Regardless, this is a good way to wear out 2 of your batteries quicker than the other 2. And I guess that means that this port here is only for charging NiCads. It's actually not even for running this, because you can't run this on external power, you have to put batteries in. And that made this a big pain in the butt here, because there was so much corrosion in here. So much. I've actually been doing a lot of cleaning inside here. And I had to take these battery terminals out and soak them in vinegar and then get a little grinder down to clean them up. You can see on this insulation pad on the back how corroded everything is. So that means it's playing now. I suspect this will have the same problem that Techbone had in his video with getting a grip on the cartridge. So that's going to be my next step. I might have to put something on the outside. I think I remember he put some heat shrink or tape around it. Well, I think my problem's with this cartridge. It's got kind of a bit of a weird bend to it. It looks almost like it's these spindles are angled a little bit. It's kind of bowed on the sides, and even with the heat shrink on the end of this motor, you can hear it's trying. It feels like it's trying. But there's just nothing. And if I take this out, when I try and push something into this brake, it seems to make no difference in terms of how freely these spindles move. So if I go and spin this manually, it'll spin a little bit, but it's pretty jammed up. And look at that. Look on this side, that normal sized slot, right? And then on this side, how collapsed that slot is. Like it's completely, how narrow it is, and you can see the byproduct of that. The motor has been scraping the side of this when the cartridge is put in. So I think this cartridge is hooped. It looks like it's perhaps been sitting somewhere with a lot of heat, or just hot and cold changes and the plastic is warped. This is the same brand, so this is probably the original cart that came with this. I'm gonna play around with this to see if I can loosen this up. I might. It's kind of on this side. This side, it's already coming apart. So I don't know. Maybe I dare open this up and just pull the brake right out. Also, look at these little black flakes. I don't know how well they'll show up here. They're all over. Those weren't there before. That's the motor spinning against the rubber on the inside of these reels and trying to spin them. And apparently making good enough, making a good enough connection that it's grinding up the rubber on here. Like, look at that. That's the bottom one is angled. And if you look this direction, it kind like I can feel it here. It feels like it's expanded in the middle, or maybe it's shrunk on the sides. Just to confirm my suspicions, here's the really narrow side. I've just popped the heat shrink off momentarily, and it can't even get past the motor on that side. You gotta really push in. Whereas on the good side, I guess you could call it, good side, unfortunately, it's loose. It's much wider and it just slides on no problem. Okay, I'm going for it. I even had my knife out all ready to score and cut this label, but it just peeled right off. That glue is, yeah, it's gone. So I'm just gonna work my way around here. It's two pieces of plastic and they're just bonded in the center with a bit of overlap. They each have a bit of overlap and there's a bit of glue in there, and that glue can be popped. I've popped the other side now, the good side. So it's just a matter of opening it up, and I hope that just pops along here. You can tell that this was never meant to be opened, because it forced me to damage the tape a little bit with this little hook. So this sort of guide roller on either side is glued to this plastic peg. It's got this little metal piece there, so you can't just pull the tape down. That metal piece holds the tape up there. So I had to sort of get a flat blade screwdriver and push it up and then hook it down, which of course creases the tape. And here we go. Possibly a world first, at least on YouTube, opening up one of those Sanyo cartridge pack tapes. This little cover went on top like that, and then there was a little washer that sits on the very top of this metal piece, which just sort of pushes up against here. That's already starting to crack. So I have a feeling that this plastic over time has shrunk, but because the spindle in the middle is metal, it sort of pulled around the metal and cracked and fatigued and sort of jammed itself up, and that's why it's no longer playing. So what I might do is I might, when I re-glue it or tape it, put a little bit of spacing around the edge so that it's not so tight, and that might help it play. And here's what the inside looks like. These little rubber wheels. It's a little rubber on the outside of the wheels. It's rock hard, and it's actually disintegrating. And look at that. That is where the motor was stuck. So the motor was just grinding away. Shit, actually that's going to be a problem. I wonder if there's something I could put along this surface and just refinish it completely. Because there's not much life left in this rubber. This has led a hard life. This has led a stored in the garage for 40 years of seasons kind of life. Look at this. See if I can get some better light here. That discoloration, and it's visible here. You can see on this spool, this plastic spool, that little melted spot, and there was another melted nasty spot down here that I had to scrape down with my knife because it was getting caught in here. I think all that's from the battery acid. Got all the way over into the cartridge. So that could have also been causing a problem. Regardless, I'm pulling the brake out. I don't care. No more brake. We're done. Well, it can rewind the tape now. Play still sucks. But what's interesting is, let's see how well the camera can pick up the spinning. You can sort of see it with the frame rate, but like, that's how much torque I've got. Nothing. Nothing at all. If I flip to rewind, actually this is just spinning. I've got tons of torque. Like I can barely stop this with my fingers. But on play, super easy. Let's see if I can get a better view. This does not like close-ups. So I'm gonna go through everything here. What's interesting though, when I do that, let me just go back. The 3 volts being supplied to the motor in play is not changing at all. That's no motor load, motor fully stalled. Motor back to spinning, fully stalled. So, like, I just put in some even brand new batteries, even brand newer, whatever, than the ones I was using, which I knew were good, just to, you know, squash that idea. So yeah, why is this motor losing so much torque at 3 volts? So I think I got a combination of lots of problems here. First off, that motor doesn't seem to have very much torque, and it could be that it's designed to give just enough torque to spin those platters with the perfect contact, perfect angle and everything. What I noticed is that if this just spins in its place, you saw that little divot on the rubber mat inside this. Now this, without the brake, I think this is okay now in terms of ease of moving. Like I can easily spin it and it gives off no resistance at all. The problem that, like, you can kind of see there is it bounces. So I'll spin this reel and the other reel will sort of spin a bunch, give me a bunch of slack, then stop for a while, and then you got a bunch of slack loose, then it pulls tight again, and it just keeps doing that. So the brake, I think, adds a little bit of back tension on this cassette. So probably needed, but the combination with this plastic being shrunk and this motor not being able to grip the degrading rubber on the inside there, and possibly a weak motor. Like, I'm not going to say that the motor isn't part of the problem here. Because again, let's go to play. Now that I have the speed turned all the way up, it does seem to be working better. So it is doing better, but you can see that I have about 2.8 volts with the speed at max. And it's really weak. Like, I can really slow it down here. And if I turn the speed down a lot, we're sitting at around 2 volts. And I can stall it. Like, that's stalled right there. It's super easy. If I go into rewind, see a nice 6 volts. And I'm barely loading it down at all. I don't know why this is having so much trouble. At least to me, this seems real easy to spin. But the motor just seems to be slipping. Maybe the heat shrink I used is not good for gripping. It is kind of smooth on the outside. I know you can get some that's a lot better of a rubber. Well, I would say that this unit works about as well as any of these of its age works. The motor spins properly, I guess. I mean, it seems pretty weak at the low speeds, but that might just be me. It might just need to hit the cassette a certain way. I checked, there really isn't any like bad connections in between that would be failing under higher loads, under higher currents, so I don't know. I think the biggest problem I have is that this cartridge is in such bad shape. It's just like, you look at it bowing in like that, this plastic is warped and destroyed, and that's sort of my big problem. The other big problem, and this I guess is to do with this cassette player, was the battery leakage inside that damaged the little 2 battery clips inside here. So as you can see, they've been cleaned up, but the little rivets that hold them in place are still not there. So they're just kind of loose. You can jam the batteries up against them, but it's, you know, not pretty. They look 1,000 times better than they did before. And that just goes to speak to how bad they were before. You can see a little bit of corrosion on the speaker that I had to neutralize, and all sorts of good stuff. And you can even see the little bubbles in the finishing of this. Is this cast aluminum case? Well, I was hoping to show it working, but at least I can give an overview of this little guy, which is a Craig 490 transistorized. So 490 is the model number. Flip to the other side here is the electronic notebook. And this feels nice. Like, it's got that nice heft to it. Very square, very solid, very satisfying. Kind of like the cameras of the time, like same build. So the differences between this one and the Sanyo, I think it was a 35, Micro-Pack 35 that Techmoan showed. This one has a pause switch. So it's got an electronic pause switch, and it also has a remote connector for the microphone. So if you ever use those old microphones on cassette players that have the 2 connectors side by side, and it's got a little switch on the microphone that pauses and unpauses the cassette player, that's what this is. Or you can use this switch if you don't have a remote plugged in. Another big difference, his has the speed control here. This one, the volume control, is on the front, and the speed control is this little unlabeled dial on the side. And it's got colored markings, I guess, so you can decide. There's blue, so there's a light blue, blue, yellow, and then red is the fastest. And you can see they get wider as they go along. The control is very similar, it's just mounted 90 degrees for the mechanism. So you have rewind, stop is the neutral position, this little red indicator shows it, play, and then if you want to get into record, you lift and turn it to record. Now, I haven't experienced, because I haven't been able to play it yet, but he was saying that this switch, there's a little foil on the end of the cartridge when it gets to the very end, and when that goes over a sensor that's mounted here, it detects it, similar to a Betamax VCR. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I guess so, but this is a little VU meter, so it's got speed, play and record. Okay, that's different. At any rate, it's got a little coil in there that you power it up and will move this needle. So there's only 2 wires going to it, so I think that part that's recessed back there, or that sticks into the cassette area, is for this. I'm wondering if maybe one of the heads is supposed to detect that foil. But this brings me to the other nice feature of this. It has a built-in microphone. So you don't need to use an external microphone to record. It's got a little microphone on the face there. Something I don't like on this one compared to the Sanyo, your window's very, very tiny. So when you want to see where the cassette is, it's kind of hard to see. It doesn't give you a lot of light to shine in there when the cassette's full. And the other thing too is this is not an external power port. I thought it was, but the way this works is in rewind, it uses all 4 batteries in series for 6 volts to the motor, and in play it uses 2 of the batteries, so it's got essentially like a middle tap. So you've got 2 batteries in series, middle tap, 2 batteries in series. So you either get 6 volts across all 4 or 3 volts across 2 of them. And I was just injecting 6 volts onto here originally, and I couldn't figure out why the motor wouldn't play, or the motor wouldn't spin in play mode, but it worked in rewind. And that's because this is just for charging. See this little label here? It's a charge plug for using nickel-cadmium NiCad batteries. Don't charge a mercury battery. Alright, I popped some batteries back in this so I can sort of demonstrate a little bit. So I've just turned it on to play mode. You can see this meter has come up, and this is the pause switch. Now when I adjust the speed, right now it's on max, it does kind of go down a little bit. See, I can bring it back up, and when I slow it down, it goes down. If I stick my finger in here and sort of slow the motor, it seems to react a little bit. And then I'll bring the speed back up with the control. So this seems to be indirectly measuring the playback speed, which is kind of neat. And then I imagine for record then, this might not even be used for VU. Let's try that. Testing. Testing. Oh wait, no it is. Testing, 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 testing. Sorry for the shaky cam there. So that is VU meter. At this point I thought I might check eBay, see if maybe there's any extra cartridges I could buy. Ooh. Ooh. Ah, nope, nope, nope. Well, shit. I guess I'm done here.